Hey Bookaholics, and welcome back to another reading vlog. We're doing another Orbit Recommends vlog today, and the book in question is Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. The synopsis of Some Desperate Glory is: while we live, the enemy shall fear us. All her life, Keir has trained for the day she can avenge the murder of planet Earth. Raised in the bowels of Gaia Station, alongside the last scraps of humanity, she readies herself to face the wisdom, the all-powerful, reality-shaping weapon that gave the Majoda their victory over humanity. They are what's left. They are what must survive. Keir is one of the best warriors of her generation, the sword of a dead planet. But when Command assigns her brother to certain death and relegates her to the nursery to bear sons until she dies trying, she knows she must take humanity's revenge into her own hands. Alongside her brother's brilliant but seditious friend and a lonely captive alien, she escapes from everything she's ever known into a universe far more complicated than she was taught, and far more wondrous than she could have imagined. A thrillingly told queer space opera about the wreckage of war, the family you find, and who you must become when every choice is stripped from you. For those of you who don't know, I have two motivations for reading this book. Basically, I have decided to do a sci-fi summer. May through to August, I am going to be reading one sci-fi book as a book club read, and then I'm spoiler vlogging the experience and chatting about it with you all. This also, however, worked out quite in my favour, because at the end of Terraformers, when I was trying to think of what book to read for the next vlog, Orbit Recommends came up with Some Desperate Glory, which I owned. So now we are not only going to be reading this as part of my book club read and therefore spoiler vlogging the experience so that I can chat to you all about it, we're also then at the end going to see how well of a recommendation this is in comparison to Terraformers, because if it's recommended at the end of Terraformers, is it solely because it's another Orbit sci-fi, or is it actually a decent recommendation for fans of that first book? So double motivation for picking this one up, and we're going to hopefully do this experiment together. I'm very excited to do so. Hopefully I'm going to have a fantastic time with this. I know that a lot of the booktubers that I trust in the sci-fi sphere have really enjoyed this one, or at the very least gotten a conversation out of it. With sci-fi like this, the conversation is partly more important than the emotional investment for me. I want this is a much more intellectual experience for me personally, so I am hoping that that is what is going to happen here, that I'm going to have a brain experience going on. It's not very long and it is a standalone, so hopefully I will be able to get through it relatively quickly. This book is already subdivided into 5 sections, so I literally am going to be reading the sections and doing spoilers for each section, which will make the read along experience substantially easier. So the vlog therefore is going to be divided into part 1, Gaia, part 2, Chrysanthemum, part 3, Wisdom, part 4, Magna Terra, and part 5, Victrix. So hopefully I will be able to have some interesting conversations with you about this throughout this vlog, so do feel free to chat along as you go. There is also a Discord section specifically for this book over on my Discord, which is always linked in the description box. I'm glad that you're joining us, and let's get into some spoilery thoughts. Again, the whole vlog is spoilers, so if you do not want spoilers for this book, go read it and then come back. We're in no rush. Hey vlog, I am checking in because I have now read part 1 of Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. This one is so far turning out to be one that is capturing my interest, that I think is going to provide a lot of conversations, but as of yet hasn't provided much connection to the characters. So basically in this first part we have had where our protagonist Keir has been shown as having this incredible amount of physical prowess. She is a somewhat enhanced human who is a very good soldier and has the perfect body type for being a soldier. And her friend are discussing the fact that her friend assumes that she is going to be the one that gets sent to the nursery, and that our protagonist Keir is going to be the one that is obviously going to be given command. And the way that Keir feels almost like it's owed to her, that all of the work that she's done means that she deserves this, and the way that she feels kind of bad for her friend Cleo, but not really bad. Not like me getting a command post means that you have to then become breeding stock. She just kind of feels like, oh, well, you know, it's our lot. and that's it. So that was quite interesting. And then afterwards we have it where Keir actually finds out that she's going to be the one that's going to get sent to the nursery, and that Cleo is going to be the one that is going to get command. She goes and talks to her friend Liesel, and her friend is kind of uncomfortable with the position that she's in, but she's, taking it in her stride because it's the only option that she has. And the way that Keir feels really uncomfortable with how the men look at Liesel now that she is a breeder, which is really gross. So then we have it where Keir goes and confronts her uncle, who's the one in charge of discerning who goes where, and wondering why she's being sent to the nursery when she's the best soldier. And then her uncle kind of saying, yes, you're the best soldier, but you are just one, which means that the best thing we can do is have you reproduce so that then you are having even more babies and you are making more soldiers that would be even better than you. So she's kind of resigned to the role until she finds out that her brother has left the station. So on this station, you have the notion that technically you can just leave the station. You wouldn't be welcomed back, but you can just leave the station. So she is wondering why he would just leave without saying anything, why he would just leave her when her older sister left years ago and is now branded a traitor. So we have it where she goes and confronts her brother Mags's best friend. The friend sees that it's possible that he's actually been sent on a strike mission to go cause havoc. So she then realizes that it's a suicide mission and she doesn't want that for her brother, so she follows him. She leaves and she follows him, and that's when we see that there is an alien on this station as well that she lives on. So she's going to abandon her post, she's going to steal this alien, and Avi's coming with her, and they're all leaving to go and find her brother. Now, obviously, a lot of important conversations are happening in this first part, especially around women and reproductive rights, and I think they're handled well. I just think that it would matter more if I had an emotional investment. For a moment there, when we find out that Keir is going to be the one that's going to the nursery, you are kind of roped into Keir's feelings that it should be Cleo, not Keir, on the basis that Keir doesn't deserve it because she's done so well as a soldier and is now being penalized for it. Cleo is like the second best. She is incredibly good at what she's doing. So even slightly being roped in for a moment, I think is a discussion that is worth having. I think it's an interesting conversation of just, it shouldn't be that it's Keir or Cleo. It just shouldn't be a thing. And I think that was handled really well on the author's part. For my notes, we have the characters do feel rather distant apart from Avi. Now, Avi is an interesting one because I'm really liking Avi, but there's definitely something going on with him that I'm hoping will be revealed later. He is gay and his best friend Mags has a crush on him or is in love with him. That's an interesting one as well because I don't know if Avi doesn't reciprocate Mags's feelings or if he's trying to protect him from something. I don't know. But Avi is the character that I'm liking the most, not because he's the most likable or even the most moral. He's just the one that I find most interesting and has like quite a personality going where everyone else doesn't really. I'm enjoying reading him. Yiso, which is the alien that the captive alien that they take with him, I think is going to be a really interesting addition to this story because he's someone that fears humans, and I think it's going to highlight the way that humans have treated this galaxy, the way that humans have treated other alien species. I mean, look at how we treat each other. If we're from a different nationality or a different race or a different creed or sexual or gender orientation, imagine how we would treat a completely alien species, especially ones like Yiso, which is more, like he even says, like he's more fragile than humans physically, like he's not got the physical prowess of a human, ones that we would try and dominate. So his fear and his outlook on the way that humans behave and the way that humans are is fascinating, especially because in the opening of this, we get like an excerpt from a text that is about the way that humans are violent and why. So it's talking about how, because we started out as apex predators, so we do have like predatory nature, including being territorial, including being protective of our clans, etc., and that it's like a baseline instinct. And no, not all humans are violent, but all humans can be provoked into violence was an interesting one as an outlook from like a non-violent species. I appreciated it. I don't know, I think it was a really well constructed thing. If you can, I would read the sample that you can get online of just like the first
page where it's just talking about humans and their violence, because it was a fantastic way to open this book and give you an idea of the conversation that we're going to be having. Obviously, the other important conversation is that of breeding, the survival of human race, and to an extent eugenics. You know, we've got a little bit of this, we need the perfect soldiers going, so we need to breed accordingly. It's very, you know, Aryan in vibe, and it's an important conversation to have, because obviously, especially at the moment where women's rights are backpedaling at an astonishing rate, having conversations around forced reproduction, an important conversation to have when we're talking about morality. Even since women have had more rights than we used to, we've still, I think all of us face the pressure of the idea of marriage and babies. We're all kind of programmed to think that we should want marriage and babies. I'm curious to see if any more comes of that conversation, or if it was just a human thing to do to try and force women to carry our babies just for the sole sake of survival of the race. We also have an interesting conversation around the idea of faux meritocracies. A lot of societies have these ideas of meritocracies, a lot of companies have the idea of meritocracy, and I don't believe in meritocracies. I do think that there are some places that have at least a semblance of a meritocracy, but meritocracy is an interesting one because it depends on what you value as merit. So, for example, if you have two people who are performing at equal standard, most of the time you will go with the person that you like the most, that you enjoy the most, or that you find the most charismatic. They will be the ones that would get a raise or a promotion in your business, for example. So it's an interesting conversation around how meritocracies work in this society, where it's just supposedly you work really, really hard and then you get allocated to the prime position, which is what Keir has believed all her life, hence why she's worked so hard. But now working so hard has actually landed her with being penalised, because now she's not going to get command. If she'd have been second best, she would have, but instead because she's a woman and she's the best, it's best if she's breeding so she can make more men who are the best. Within meritocracies, there is the idea of, you know, the harder you work, the better your life will be. While what I have found, at least under capitalism, is that that's not the case. The more you work, it just means you get more work. Like, you mostly are just going to pick up the slack for other people. And it kind of shown here is shown both in the sense that meritocracy is a lie, and that also working so hard that it becomes the only thing you know how to do is also not healthy, because it's not going to land you anything better. So some important conversations happening there as well. I am hoping that we get more about this intergalactic community and that we learn more about the other alien species outside of humanity, so that we have this different outlook on humanity and how we are as a species. I always love it when books do that, so I'm hoping we get more of that. And I'm very curious to see what happens now that technically the whole family, so you've got Keir and then her brother and her sister, have now left Gaia Station, how all of them are going to approach it differently. I don't know if Mags has just left to be a traitor, or if he has left to carry out this strike. I don't know which way he leans yet, but I'm curious to find out. Hey vlog, I'm a mess, but I'm checking in because I have in fact read part 2 of Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. This part was substantially shorter, ranging from page 107 through to page 158, so only 51 pages. And this is the section in which our protagonist Keir has now arrived on this other planet, on Chrysanthemum, which is a planet that is mostly inhabited but not solely inhabited by humans, and it is a planet that takes on human refugees from Gaia Station, which is where Keir is from. In this section, we do get a family reunion between Keir and both her sister Ursa and her brother Magnus, as well as Keir being exposed to possible alternate explanations for the existence of Gaia Station where she was from, the behaviors exhibited there, and making her also question the life that she has known. She has still not come to terms with this. She's still not fully willing to believe it, and she is still at a point where she does hate these alien species more than she hates the humans that have been mistreating her all her life. But it is definitely the beginning of her awakening. So let's quickly go through the tabs, because I don't expect this to be a long section. I did find the way that Keir is handling her confrontation with human history interesting, because she outright doesn't believe it when someone speaks badly about Gaia Station. She very much is against the idea that the humans that she's known are the ones in the wrong, while at the same time it makes her ask subtle questions. Why is it okay for the commander to be able to
touch Liesel the way that he wants to, and there's nothing that she can do about it. Why can she not decide her own fate? Why did she get allocated to the role of baby maker? Why did her brother feel the need to escape? All of these questions are brought to the forefront, especially because we do see that the reason that Magnus escaped is because he is queer, and that would potentially end up with him being either executed or at the very least reprimanded if it got out, which included him getting bullied by other people who knew his secret and threatened to out him if he didn't comply, including giving, for example, some of his rations. So we do have the homophobia that comes with Gaia Station, as well as the misogyny that she's bringing into question. With Magnus feeling completely at home, he has a boyfriend on this new planet. He is openly gay. He's allowed to go to school, get himself an education, discussing the things that make humanity that Keir has never known. Also, Keir's outlook on the way that humans are existing within this space is fantastic, because you can tell that it comes so much from indoctrination. So it is things like, for example, she thinks that art classes is making her weak. Like, why would that be a necessary class? Which again, I think is important, because it's showing the difference between human survival in a literal sense and human survival in a way that actually is important and makes life worth living. I did really find interesting the existence of Ursa and her son. Very interesting, especially because Ali has turned out to be the commander's son. So it is, again, important to kind of remember the way that the women are treated, and you still have Ursa loving her child, you know, regardless of his origins, and that being part of the reason why she ran away. So Ursa being the one that's trying to open our protagonist's eyes and trying to convince Keir that it's okay, and telling Keir how much he loves her and all of those other things, I think is really important, and I really appreciated it. The same goes in a way how Keir is now perceiving Ursa and Magnus, because Ursa was a traitor who she despised, and she sees that Ursa loves her, but she still has anger towards her for abandoning her. And then Magnus, she completely understands, and he's someone she feels protective of, but at the same time can't understand why he would be so willing to forgive a society that she deems traitorous solely on the basis for her self-expression, which is a huge in itself conversation around radicalization and indoctrination that she's going to have to slowly unweave from her makeup. And I think it is a well discussed way, because it's done slowly. Again, she just kind of questions the small things at the minute. She's not ready to question the big things, only the small things. So for example, at the beginning of the section where you had the pirates that were asking to buy Iso, saying we're used to selling Terran goods, like they're used to selling things from Terra, and obviously she didn't think much of it, but now she's thinking back and it's like, we're used to selling Terran goods, and they are specifically referring to Iso, meaning that they are used to buying and enslaving these aliens off of humans. And regardless of whether or not you consider these aliens enemies, if you have any kind of moral conduct, you're still going to be somewhat appalled by the slave trade. So interesting conversations happening, but they're all smaller and subtle going on through her mind at the moment. My second point, though, is that it's not fair on Keir that I'm finding her annoying, but I am finding her annoying. Obviously, she needs to deconstruct everything that she's thought through. So she needs to be angry. She needs to push back. She needs to think that her nephew's weak. She needs to think that her brother has betrayed her, that her sister has betrayed her, that Gaia Station is the correct way of being, because it's what she's been indoctrinated to think. But reading through the process sometimes can be great when she starts questioning things. Sometimes can be quite annoying depending on how much she's running on in her head. But again, not character's fault. It's very plausible and reasonable progression. I just find it annoying. One thing that I can say is I already, from the couple of chapters that I have known him, adore Magnus. And I swear, if Magnus is faking it so he can like fake it again, I am going to be so pissed, because he already has my soul. And I can't wait for the reunion between Avi and Magnus. Can't wait. So the only thing I have left to do is to quickly go through my tabs. The opening section this time is, instead of talking about opinions on humanity as a species, it's the history of what actually happened with Earth being destroyed, the war that happened and why it happened. And we also have a little bit of an index discussing the different types of planets, be it ones that are under protection, those are called enclave worlds, which they are inhabited by sentient species but that are still quite primitive, primitive, so therefore eventually will be brought into this galactic alliance, but not yet. They're not ready yet. They need to kind of get to a certain point before they get integrated, and they are protected worlds that are forbidden to be visited by any of the other species because they need to evolve on their own first. But then we have, for example, free worlds, we have citizen worlds, we have lots of different types of planets. I really liked this index because it showed a huge amount of socio-cultural development of this entire galactic alliance, as opposed to it just being loosely mentioned, and it's not just, oh, there are other things in the galaxy, let's not talk about it. It kind of talks about the international or intergalactic politics as well as the humans, which I think is going to hopefully play a slightly further role later on in the story. So I am very excited to continue. So that's exactly what I'm going to go do. The next part, which is part 3, is a little bit longer again. It is 158 through to 249, so just under 100 pages. So it's a little bit longer, but not too much, and hopefully I'll be able to sink my teeth in and give you a check-in once I'm done.
Hey vlog, I've finished part 3 of Some Desperate Glory. Whew! Okay, this was a part. A lot went on in this part. I was actually shocked by the ending of this part. In this part, we have had it where Kia has gone off to try and take down the Wisdom and complete Mags's strike mission. She gets intercepted by Avi and Yiso, and then watching him potentially also come to her aid and also try and take on this strike mission. They get into the Wisdom and they kind of get shown how the Wisdom functions. They take Yiso, who turns out to be one of the princes of the Wisdom, which is basically one of the people who are like an embodiment of the Wisdom. And then we are also following it as Mags tries to stop them. It was a fascinating ride because we have it where by the end of it, Avi has blown up a load of planets, Kia has killed Avi, and Mags has killed himself. Yiso is severely injured from being tortured by Avi and is probably going to die as well. So then the Wisdom has taken Kia and is going to send her elsewhere. I don't know exactly what that means yet. So fascinating part of this story. The opening to this part discusses communication and language and miscommunication within the way that humans interact, where it's also about how you say things, it's about the mannerisms that you are using, tone, inflection. There are so many layers to it, which I think was fantastic, but especially as someone who is bilingual and understands that different inflections mean different things in different languages, different structures, different mannerisms, different ways that you comport and hold yourself will be conveyed differently in different languages. So a lot about communication in here, incredibly relevant to this part, because it's about how the Wisdom is trying to communicate what actually happened to humans, what has actually happened to the humans that didn't remain on Gaia Station, and introduce the actual history. People who fled and decided that they were going to be the last holdouts and wanted to create Gaia Station so that they could not be part of this alliance, etc. The way that the wars are told differently in different communities. So many interesting theoretical points, but in this one it was just, for me, a beat for beat of I can't believe the characters in here, which is shocking because up until now the characters have definitely not played a prevalent part in my connection to the story. It's definitely been more of an intellectual than an emotional experience. I mean, I found that Yiso being a Prince of the Wisdom makes sense, especially because he's from this species that should not exist anymore, and therefore with Yiso came all the conversations around the morality of what both Kia and Avi have been doing, including Avi obviously torturing Yiso, which is awful. The pirates, when they mentioned that Yiso could be sold to them because they're used to human products, like as in like human commerce, meaning that these humans on Gaia Station oftentimes deal in selling aliens that are less powerful physically than they are, that can be captured, and the way that slavery works in there, which is absolutely devastating that is still something that we as humans would be contemplating, but not particularly shocking. Kia was very headstrong throughout all of this, still not wanting to listen to reason, still not wanting to listen to her sister and her brother, still not believing that humans could have a better life than what they have on Gaia Station. That was very infuriating, but obviously you can't get her to go from A to Z without all the letters in between. So like, I understand why she has to be so headstrong, because it's indoctrination and that's how indoctrination works, but it doesn't necessarily make for the most enjoyable experience, because most of the time I just want to slap her. Not that I would, because she's huge. Avi, throughout this part, going from someone who I was beginning to like slightly distrust and think, okay, you've definitely got an ulterior motive, to someone who is committing genocide, was a journey that I did not expect to be going on. I mean, I didn't expect him to be a good guy for the rest of the story, even though he was in the beginning one of the characters I was interested in the most and whose presence I enjoyed the most, because he had this sarcastic tone to him and the way that he talked to Keir, and he was a character that I really liked. But obviously now that's all gone to shit, and it's interesting that the characters are developed in this way, because you see it coming and at the same time they still feel very human and they feel like characters. You don't hate them as much as maybe you should, even after they do the things that they do, while at the same time you kind of celebrating when Keir snaps his neck. And it's such a weird experience because it just feels really raw and human, and that can be really emotionally tumultuous in a way that I wasn't expecting from this book. I think that the only time I've had like a true emotional response to something was when Mags killed himself, because I understand, like, I wouldn't be able to live with the weight of that, even though he didn't do anything. I wouldn't be able to live with the weight of that, the possible ramifications and outcomes, the world getting plunged into war again, all because of the actions that you were there to witness. Absolutely devastating. Committed by someone that you were in love with and your sibling. Devastating, heartbreaking. And I understood Mags, and that was one thing that actually did make me feel things in this book. Now it seems like we're going to be maybe slipping into some alternate realities. Keir's conversations with the wisdom have been absolutely fascinating as well. I love the wisdom. I love the like voice that is given to the wisdom. So I am really hoping that we will be able to have a really interesting conversation in the next part about what that actually entails. Alright vlog, so I'm here to check in again for some Desperate Glory. I have now read part 4, which is Magna Terra. I have thoughts on this part. So in this part, we go into what is basically an alternate reality. We have it where after the shock of the previous part, where we've had the planets be exploded, we have had Magnus killing himself, we have had Keir killing Avi, and the wisdom has now sent Keir to an alternate reality. In this alternate reality, we are initially following this character called Val, who is in a world where Earth won the major wars. And in this part, we are following it as Val and Keir, their consciousness get merged by the wisdom. And the wisdom has decided to do this so that he can give Keir more perspective, like the idea of the way that humans wage war. And it was fascinating because getting this approach wasn't what I expected the conversation to be. I didn't think that this conversation would be centering Keir having to come to terms with the way that humanity wages war. I thought it would be seeing the damage that humans have done, but the idea of even if humans won, this is what the world would look like. If humans lose, this is what the world looks like. And the only ones waging violence are this offshoot of humans in a world where humans lost. Like, human dominance is not necessarily something to be lauded. And I think that it was handled in a really fascinating way. I really loved the way that we explore the way Val would have existed in this world, so the way Keir would have existed in this world, her relationship with Magnus, with Liesel, and with Cleo. There's no Avi in this world as well, and the reasoning that the wisdom gives was quite interesting, because it was like, how he is a product of Gaia Station, and you have Keir being confused because she also is, she was born and raised there, but he's kind of, I assume, inferring to the fact that Avi's entire personality was so intrinsically linked to being on Gaia Station that he is willing to destroy planets for it. Even when he questions his morality, he questions it in a different avenue. So that was a fantastic conversation starter. I'm not sure how much I enjoyed it, which is an odd one. Like, as a piece of literature, as a piece of art, trying to create a conversation with you, trying to put forward a scenario for you to contemplate, I thought was handled magnificently. As someone who's just reading a book for enjoyment, I'm not sure how much I'd have gotten out of this part, because it doesn't really feel like it amounts to anything other than a conversation. It depends on what you're looking for in the book. Now, talking points that I've written down. The first one is that alternate realities do not normally work for me. I normally can't stand alternate realities. They annoy me because they normally are a deus ex machina. let's be honest. So it was interesting to me that the purpose of this one was the opposite. It was, if we gave these characters this Deus Ex Machina, they can reset and everything can go the way they want. This is the outcome it kind of shows you, is to provide the opposite almost of a Deus Ex Machina. It's a grass is always greener kind of conversation, and I did like that. Merging Val and Kier was obviously an interesting experience because we get to see how two people with the same brain, the same person with different lived experiences would approach the way they view life, the way they view their relationships, the way that they interact with the world. And it's almost like you needed both halves. You needed both Val and Kier because you needed the strength of Kier to be able to do what's necessary in the future, but you needed the humanity of Val to be able to give her a reason to do so. And I really appreciated that. And I think that the merger was done really well because you can see the nature of the character is in both of them, and it's the nurture that has made them divert. We get to watch Kier's queer awakening in real time as well. That was fun. I liked that. I love watching all of Kier's interpersonal relationships anyway. I think that she interacts fabulously. Very enjoyable. And it was nice to give that level of humanity to Kier instead of it just being through Val. The fact we've got Kier following Yiso around, and it's very clear that Yiso is trying very hard to make a point. I think very obvious to the reader, the point that Yiso and the Wisdom are trying to show Kier, and it's like, okay, she'll get there eventually. It's slow, you know, like I understand, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, we got there a while ago. We really need Kier to catch up now. But I think that's possibly a me being impatient thing as well. But yeah, I'm very interested to see now with this new merger of Val and Kier, how we're going to go about resetting the future is what I assume we're going to do. And I'm very interested to see how that pans out in the end. Hey vlog, so I have now finished Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. So this final part, Victrix, is basically where we have had Kier, who is now merged with Val, has been sent back by the Wisdom to the day that she receives the news that she is actually going to be assigned to the nursery. And now with all of the knowledge that she has acquired from both the previous Val and the previous Kier, it means that it changes her perspective and her outlook on what freedom entails. After we saw the life that Val was leading and the freedom that entails, understanding more of where Ursa and Mags were coming from when they lived on Chrysanthemum. I really did appreciate the way that it was, you need to have lived other people's experiences to fully understand. And I appreciated the thematic implications of this. We have Kier then change her mind, and she confesses that she is queer to Mags, who at this point, the previous Mags, he has no idea. She knows all about the future. She explains it all to him. It's how they managed to change Avi's mindset, and so many things that happen throughout this section that are rewriting the wrongs that happened in the first two parts and the change of mindset and experiences that Kier has had. In the end, we have it so that these people are having to come to terms with the devastation of Earth, with the removal of Earth. There's no going back from that. So now we have them where it's how they make a better future, how the people from Chrysanthemum have managed to integrate into this galactic community, and how they are actually living freedom while you have this military regime whose sole purpose is violence and destruction, claiming to be the ones that are free. So watching that unfold in Kier's mind as she explains to her brother, she explains to Avi, as she explains to Yiso, and then eventually also Cleo and Liesel, and then the way that it unfolds that eventually leads to the Wisdom self-destroying, and then the destruction of Gaia Station as well, so that the Gaians don't use the destruction of the Wisdom as a means of then attacking other societies. So then we have it where they destroy the station, but they evacuate the nursery and the women that are in the nursery. I don't know, I think that it was a very fitting conclusion. I didn't feel like it was a very emotional conclusion given the amount of things that are going on, but it was a fitting conclusion thematically, and I really did appreciate that. So let's go through my notes. So first of all, my thoughts therefore on part 5, we have the way that Kier understands the notion of freedom, the way that so many humans believe that freedom is enacting your free will onto other people. Corruption and amorality of that, I think, is really important. And especially the idea that we cannot be part of another community while remaining free. This is true within Earth. The idea that we have to have national borders and boundaries because of countries whose freedom we need to protect. And it was a very interesting conversation, and as sci-fi does, it's to reflect our present with this supposed future, and I think it did that well. The interactions that we have between Avi, Mags, Yiso, Cleo, Liesel throughout this book, throughout this section of the book, throughout Kier being the one that knows what she's doing and everyone else needing to be brought up to speed, was also fantastic because the different reactions felt very human, and I really appreciated that. And I don't think that there was any point in it where I felt like things were being shoehorned in for thematic reasons, while at the same time all of these different characters brought forth a lot of interesting conversations and notions and ideas about the freedom that Kier is talking about. The idea of saving the women and the children from the nursery was interesting because it never felt like it was like Titanic, where it's like, you know, women and children get first pick on the boats, and it was more just the women who have been mistreated are the women who are in the nursery, and the children are children and have a chance to change and grow and become better than their forebearers. So it was an interesting choice that it felt more like these are people whose minds can be changed, who can be reformed, who can genuinely integrate into society, while everyone else is potentially too far gone. It was interesting. Obviously, it's also the idea that you are having to make this decision and that you can't save every single innocent person on Gaia, and that did actually feel quite devastating, and I did appreciate that. The thing I think I enjoyed the most out of this part, however, is actually the interactions between Kier and the wisdom. So the conversations that Kier is actively having with the wisdom, especially at the end where you have the section where Kier is like, oh my god, you're not completely gone, and the wisdom's like, no, not completely, but I am removing myself from this. I think that it was handled really well. I think the debates that happened between them, the empirical logic versus the sentiment that came from those conversations, especially from someone who isn't very sentimental like Kier, it wasn't that it got soppy, it's that it got human, and I liked that. So yeah, I really did appreciate this part, and I think that it did drive the themes home really well. So all I have left now is to talk over my general thoughts of the book. And to be honest, I really enjoyed the themes and the message, the discussions around freedom, separationism, what it is to betray your people, what it is to be indoctrinated, and so many other things that are brought to the forefront in this story. It felt very relevant to today's climate as well, so I appreciated that. I did feel like the characters felt very purposeful and they were very thematically relevant and therefore nuanced to the themes. I don't feel like I ever connected to them emotionally. I don't feel like their draw was an emotional one. The closest I get is Mags. I do feel like there is a level of emotion in there, but I don't think that at any point the purpose of this book was to make me get all up in my feelings. It was to get up in my brain. So I think that the characters serve their purpose well, but if you are someone who requires some kind of emotional connection to your characters, you may struggle a little bit more with this one. The writing felt very intentional. It felt very clear as to what it was trying to do in regards to the purpose of the book. The point of the book is abundantly clear. The conversations it's trying to have are clear, but at the same time, I don't feel like my hand is forced. At no point do I think that I need to share the opinions of any of the characters or that I am being steered by the author, while at the same time the conversation the author is trying to bring up within your brain is very clear. So I liked the balance of, I'm not going to beat about the bush, I'm not going to tiptoe around this, but at the same time I'm not telling you how to think about it or how to process it. And I love books that manage to do that because they allow me to think on my own, but are suggesting it in a clear way that this is intentional, and I liked that. The pacing, while not necessarily the most conventional of pacings, I think it was a very intriguing choice. The way that we have all of the different multiverse aspects or whatever you want to call it, different alternate realities, I really did appreciate that, especially because I didn't ever feel like I was being taken out to go back in, while at the same time it wasn't necessarily a seamless flow, but it did handle it well. Like at no point did I think, oh, I need to put this down for a bit, this is getting annoying, or it's not, or like it's taking me out of the story. So it was an odd one, but I think it handled it well. And then finally, the story itself was presented mostly through its themes. I don't think there is a huge amount of just outright story. It's very thematically driven, this story. I wouldn't even say it's plot or character driven, it is themes driven. The purpose of this is the conversation, because the story arc changes quite frequently, and then the characters themselves are of course evolving. So it is the themes of the story that are actually the driving force of what we are getting. I do think that while not necessarily the plot beats or the way that the author goes about it are very innovative, I think that it was entertaining, and I think that while the plot wasn't innovative, the way that we intrinsically linked the plot with its themes were handled immaculately. So I think overall it was a very good book, and I've given it 4 stars. Does this actually work for fans of Terraformers? I think so, but also I think this is better than Terraformers personally. We have this whole galactic outlook on humanity and human impact, which I think is present in both. So while Terraformers, it is a discussion on human destruction and carelessness and colonial mentalities of humans and the unwillingness to face the consequences of our actions. This is much more about governmental structures and freedom. So while both of them are an outside looking in on humanity, and if you took what we do with our planet to a galactic scale, both of them work for that. But I think that with this one, the focus is more political and social, while the other one is more capitalism and colonialism. So they are similar in their attempts to bring to light human flaws, but they approach different aspects. So I do think that you could get enjoyment out of them, especially if you read Terraformers in a intellectual regard. You're wanting to think about it, and it's a book that you want to discuss, and a book that you think would serve the purpose of critical thinking more than enjoyment or emotion. Then there is overlap here. I do think that I liked the characters more in here, and I do think that it's just better written and it's more concise and just also more enjoyable if you're just reading a book for enjoyment. But I do think that there is enough overlap between the two that it is genuinely a viable recommendation. So props there to Orbit for actually keeping a decent recommendation going. The next one that we have for the next vlog is going to be Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. So we shall see if I believe by the end of it if Ocean's Echo is a good recommendation for fans of some desperate glory. We shall see. But that is all from me for today. So thank you ever so much for watching. Let me know if you've read this book and your thoughts on it. Let me know if you read Terraformers and you agree with my assessment. Let me know if you're planning on picking up Ocean's Echo. Also, let me know if, based on my enjoyment of this one, you have any recommendations for me. I would love to hear them. But that is all from me for today. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye.